I stood in the hospital corridor, the smell of antiseptic hanging thick in the air. The bone marrow match report in my hand was a single thin sheet of paper, but it weighed a ton. The sharp, agonizing pain of a thick needle repeatedly piercing my lower back in my past life gnawed at my nerves all over again. I smiled. Then, right in front of the stunned doctor, I ripped the report that held the fate of the Cole family into pieces too small to ever be put back together, and tossed them into the trash can. I swiftly blacklisted and deleted the hospital's number from my phone. My finger slid across the screen and dialed another number, a name I had only ever seen in financial news in my past life, someone I'd never dared to contact. Adrian Moss, the heir to the Moss Corporation and the sworn enemy of the Coles. The very man they had crushed and left blind. The call connected almost instantly. The other end was dead silent. I didn't waste time. Mr. Moss, my name is Chloe. I'm Ethan Cole's fiancé. I have Cole Industries core project data for the next 3 quarters, including their fatal vulnerabilities. I want to make a deal. His breathing remained steady, as if he had no interest in this earth-shattering secret. What kind of deal? Marry me. I spoke each word with deliberate clarity. I'll be your wife, and these trade secrets will be my dowry. I have only one condition. Give me your protection and your resources. I want the Cole family utterly destroyed. The line went silent for a full 30 seconds, so long I thought he'd hang up on me for being a lunatic. Finally, he spoke. City Hall. Half an hour. It all happened with a cool efficiency. We didn't even exchange a single pleasantry. It was only when I held that crisp, official marriage certificate that the reality of my rebirth finally sank in. That afternoon, Ethan Cole's call came through. His voice was more furious than I'd ever heard it. Chloe, where the hell are you? We found a match for Dad, so what's your problem? The hospital said they can't reach you. I replied calmly. Oh, I'm busy. I got married. To get back at me, she'd ignore a man's life. I'd like to apologize to everyone, on behalf of my father, and for ever loving such a treacherous woman. He played his part beautifully. The image of a devoted man betrayed by a heartless fiancé instantly went viral online. I became a symbol of cold-blooded, backstabbing cruelty. I looked at the news on my phone and calmly filed that hatred away in my mind. The first item on my revenge list. The Moss estate was as somber as a deep well. The moment I stepped through the main gate, I felt an invisible pressure. A butler, well past 50, stopped me. His attitude was respectful, but his guard was up. Miss Chloe, the master is waiting for you in the study. I'll have your luggage disinfected and sent to a guest room. I nodded without a word and walked straight to the study. Adrian Moss sat behind a large desk, his face half hidden by a pair of dark sunglasses. Even so, I could feel his scrutinizing gaze. He didn't speak, and the silence was terrifying. My husband from my past life, Ethan Cole, had never given me this kind of intimidating presence. After a long while, he finally spoke. The vulnerabilities in Cole Industries projects. I want the details. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I walked closer, stopping in front of his desk. Mr. Moss, have you been experiencing high intraocular pressure recently, accompanied by intermittent migraines and nausea? His sunglasses-clad face turned toward me. I couldn't see his expression, but I knew his guard was up even higher. What are you trying to say? These are typical complications after nerve damage to the eyes. Medication can only provide temporary relief. In my past life, a friend of mine also had a bone marrow transplant and suffered similar after effects. I casually spun my past suffering into a story about a friend. He later found that gently pressing the acupressure points around the orbital bone, combined with a warm compress, could effectively relieve the nerve pain. Would you like to try it? Adrian was silent. The butler immediately stepped in to reprimand me. Miss Chloe, the master's health is managed by a world-class medical team. It doesn't require your concern. I ignored the butler, speaking calmly to Adrian. But that world-class team can't fix your eyes, can they? My method carries no risk and only takes 5 minutes. Another long silence. Finally, he gave a slight nod. I walked around the desk and stood behind him. Following the memories of countless times I had eased my own pain, I accurately found the pressure points. The moment my fingertips touched his skin, his entire body tensed up. I paid it no mind, just applied the perfect amount of pressure, and began a slow massage. 5 minutes later, I pulled my hands back. "How do you feel?" He didn't answer. He just waved his hand, and the butler, understanding immediately, excused himself. Now it was just the two of us in the study. "I'll give you the resources you want. You can use the study downstairs. What you can find is up to you." This was his first gesture of trust. That night, using the limited access he'd given me, I anonymously packaged the core code vulnerability of an alt project from Starlight Tech, a subsidiary of Coal Industries, and sent it to several of the most aggressive business journals. In my past life, this vulnerability had cost the Coal family nearly $1 billion yuan. The news broke the next morning. Starlight Tech's stock plummeted at the opening bell, sending the market into a panic. Ethan's call went straight to his precious Luna, but he didn't know I'd already bugged his phone and was listening in. "Luna, don't worry, this little thing won't affect us. It's got to be that blind fool Adrian Moss. Does he really think he can take me down with these dirty tricks? So naive." On the other end, Luna soothed him in her signature pure, soft voice. "Ethan, don't be angry. I know you can handle it. But about Chloe, now that she's married into that family, will she tell them all of our secrets?" "Her? What does she know?" Ethan's voice was filled with contempt. "She's just a stupid woman who only knows how to shop. I just used her to piss off Adrian Moss. She's a useless pawn in the Moss family. Now nobody cares about her. Luna, you're the one who matters. Take care of yourself. Dad still needs you." Listening to their conversation, I quietly turned off the screen. A useless pawn? Perfect. Predators love it when their prey lets its guard down. As I expected, Mr. Cole's condition worsened dramatically a few days later, throwing the family into chaos. I was kind enough to send them a copy of Luna's compatibility report. Instantly, all of the Cole family's hopes were pinned on her. Soon, news spread through high society. The Coles were hosting a grand charity gala to thank the community for its support and to publicly honor the great bone marrow donor, Ms. Luna. The moment I saw the news, I knew their game. They were building a moral altar to force Luna onto it, pressuring her into donating. What a perfect little drama of sacrificing for love. I immediately contacted the people Adrian had assigned to me and told them to hype up the story even more. The headline: City's Angel to donate Marrow again for love. Coal Industries heir pledges his life in return. I wanted this story to be known by everyone in the city, to have every camera and microphone aimed at Luna's pure, innocent face. Adrian's resources were indeed powerful. Overnight, Luna became the talk of the town, a living saint willing to sacrifice her own health for love. On the night of the gala, I made a grand entrance as Adrian Moss's wife. My appearance drew everyone's attention. The glares from Ethan and his mother felt like knives scraping my skin. "You have the nerve to show your face? Mrs. Cole hissed through clenched teeth. "Chloe, you've utterly disgraced our family. Look at Luna, and then look at you. You're not even worthy of being compared to her." I ignored her and walked straight to a pale, forced smiling Luna. "Ms. Luna, congratulations. You'll soon be the next Mrs. Cole." I raised my champagne glass, my smile gentle. "The whole city is praising you, calling you an angel. It's so touching. Unlike me, just a selfish mortal." Luna's face turned even whiter. She gripped Ethan's arm, her knuckles turning white from the force. "Chloe, please don't say that. I just did what I had to do." Ethan pulled her into his arms, glaring at me. "Chloe, that's enough. Luna hasn't recovered yet. Don't provoke her. Get out." The show was about to begin. On stage, Ethan gave an emotional speech thanking Luna for her great sacrifice. Under the spotlight, countless cameras focused on her. She was trapped on a pedestal she couldn't climb down from. To refuse would be to expose herself as a fraud, to let a man die. With tears in her eyes, amidst a sea of praise and applause, she nodded emotionally. I'm willing." The crowd erupted. However, the climax came during the physical examination. To demonstrate authenticity, the Coles had invited notaries and a medical team to perform a preliminary checkup on Luna, right there on the spot. The results came back quickly. The doctor, holding the report, announced with a troubled expression. "I'm sorry, Mr. Cole, but according to the preliminary examination, Ms. Luna's vitals, especially her hematopoietic stem cell activity, do not meet the criteria for donation. A forced donation would not only be useless to the patient, but would also endanger Ms. Luna's life." The venue fell silent. The crowd's admiring gazes turned to confusion, then to suspicion. A person who wasn't even eligible to donate was putting on a public spectacle? The Coles were slapped in the face, their grand gesture turned into a colossal joke. After the gala, I saw them in a corner of the parking lot. For the first time, Ethan shoved Luna's hand away. "Why didn't you tell me your body couldn't handle it? Now our whole family is a laughingstock." I thought I could. "Ethan, I really wanted to save your father," Luna sobbed, tears streaming down her face. But once that crack appeared, it could never be mended. The Cole family's farce was a pleasant prelude to my symphony of revenge, but they weren't done yet. Desperation turns people into beasts. A week later, I was reading in the Moss family garden when I felt a sharp pain in the back of my neck, and everything went black. I don't know how much time passed, but when I woke up, the acrid smell of disinfectant filled my nose, making me nauseous. I found myself on a cold operating table, my wrists and ankles tightly bound with leather straps. I couldn't move. Bright, shadowless lamps blinded me. Several doctors in white coats and masks surrounded me, their eyes looking at me as if I were a lifeless object. The operating room door opened, and Ethan and his mother walked in. The mask Ethan wore for the media was gone, replaced by a venomous, almost crazed expression. And my former mother-in-law, the socialite who was always so concerned with her appearance, now looked utterly deranged. "You're awake? You bitch." She strode forward and slapped me hard across the face. "Did you think marrying that blind man would solve everything? Let me tell you, you were born a Cole, and you'll die a Cole. Your life belongs to us." I didn't struggle. I just looked at Ethan. He slowly approached, a document in his hand, which he threw in my face. It was my original bone marrow match report. They had found it through illegal means. "Chloe, I never imagined you were lying to us from the very beginning." His voice was soft, but it chilled me more than any shout. "It turns out the one person who could save my father was you all along." He felt not a shred of guilt, only fury at my deception. "You're really something else. You played all of us, watched us beg Luna like fools, watched the Cole family become the laughingstock of the city. You must be very proud of yourself, aren't you?" I stared at him, saying nothing. He leaned down, whispering in my ear at a volume only we could hear. "You wanted revenge, didn't you? Well, now I'm giving you that chance." He straightened up and ordered the doctors beside him, "Prepare for live extraction." The doctors didn't hesitate for a second, picking up the thick, long puncture needles they had prepared. My heart seized. The memory of that agonizing, repeated piercing from my past life washed over me like a tidal wave. I began to struggle violently, the straps cutting bloody lines into my wrists. "No, you can't." Ethan grabbed my shoulders, his grip strong enough to crush my bones. His face was twisted with a cruel, sadistic pleasure. "Can't we? Of course we can. Chloe, this is the only way for you to atone as a daughter-in-law of the Cole family." He turned to his mother, to the doctors, as if announcing a sacred offering. "Her existence, her value, from this day forward, is to be my father's medicine. Using her marrow to save my father's life is her natural duty. It is her salvation." A doctor holding a needle that glinted coldly under the light aimed for my lower back. I felt the cold metal touch my skin, could clearly sense the sharp tip searching for the space between my bones. Despair, like a suffocating net, wrapped tightly around me. My existence was just a dose of medicine. Just as the needle was about to pierce my skin, a loud bang echoed as the heavy operating room door was kicked open from the outside. Wood splinters and fragments of the door flew everywhere, shocking everyone. A tall figure stood silhouetted against the light in the doorway. It was Adrian Moss. The signature sunglasses were gone. His dark eyes were as sharp as an eagle's, showing no trace of blindness. Behind him, a dozen bodyguards in black suits swiftly took control of the entire room. The expression on Ethan's face shifted from stunned to shocked, and finally to incredulous fear. Your eyes. Adrian ignored him. He walked straight to my side, took off his suit jacket, and draped it over me, covering my exposed skin. His fingertips were cool, but his movements were gentle as he undid the straps on my wrists. Don't be afraid. I'm here. Mrs. Cole was the first to react, screaming like a madwoman. Adrian Moss. This is a Cole family matter. What right do you have to barge in here? Someone. Get him out of here. But not a single bodyguard listened to her. The doctors involved in the procedure had already collapsed to the floor in fear. Ethan tried to feign composure, his voice a weak imitation of a roar. Adrian Moss, this is breaking and entering. It's kidnapping. I'm calling the police. The police? Adrian finally turned his gaze to him, a hint of pity in his eyes. Go ahead, call them. But before they get here, why don't you take a look at this? He raised his hand and snapped his fingers. In the corner of the room, a smoke detector that had seemed perfectly ordinary suddenly glowed with a small red light. It was a flawlessly disguised miniature camera. Then, Adrian's assistant stepped forward with a tablet. On the screen was a live broadcast, streaming to the entire internet. The feed showed everything that had just happened in this operating room. From me being tied to the table, to Mrs. Cole's arrogant slap, to Ethan's shameless speech about atonement and medicine, and the horrifying image of the doctor raising the needle. Every single second was broadcast crystal clear to millions of viewers. The live chat was going insane. Holy ST, is this a movie? Kidnapping his ex-fiancé to forcibly extract bone marrow. Is that Ethan Cole from Cole Industries? Oh my God. You can never judge a book by its cover. This is disgusting. Son of a bitch. Is he even human? That line, your value is to be my father's medicine. I think I'm gonna be sick. Call the police. Someone has to call the police. This is aggravated assault. Attempted murder. Public opinion exploded instantly. Ethan stared at the frantic scroll of comments on the tablet, the color draining from his face. He staggered back a step, his lips trembling, unable to form a single word. His mother's eyes rolled back, and she fainted on the spot. Adrian's bodyguards detained Ethan and the doctors. The evidence was irrefutable, their crimes undeniable. Adrian walked up to Ethan, looking down at the utterly defeated man. Ethan, did you really think I cared about your trade secrets? I married her just to wait for this day, for a chance to nail you and the entire Cole family to a pillar of shame, once and for all. The police are here. Game over. The sound of sirens grew closer, piercing the silence of this absurd drama. Adrian pulled his jacket tighter around my shoulders, the warmth shielding me from the cold glare of the surgical lights. He didn't ask a single question, just showed me with his actions that it was all over. Ethan crumpled to the floor as if his bones had been removed. He looked at me, then at Adrian, his mouth opening and closing without a sound. Fear had seized his throat. The police rushed in, moving with high efficiency to secure the scene, take the suspects into custody, and collect evidence. The fainted socialite, my former mother-in-law, was dragged out by two female officers like a sack of garbage. Through it all, I didn't say a word. It wasn't until Ethan was handcuffed and about to be led away that he seemed to snap back to reality, roaring at me like a madman. Chloe, you venomous bitch. You set this trap just to get revenge on me. You ruined me. You ruined the Cole family. I looked at him and suddenly found it funny. A trap? Mr. Cole, weren't you the one holding the butcher's knife from the very beginning? My words left him speechless, his face turning beet red. I was trying to save my father. What did I do wrong? It was you. You betrayed me first. You refused to donate. And because I refused, you kidnapped me? I asked. My voice wasn't loud, but it silenced the entire room. Ethan, is the concept of a person completely absent from your logic? He was led away, his hate-filled eyes fixed on me. In the next 24 hours, the world turned upside down. The news, Cole Industries heir kidnapped ex-fiancé for forced bone marrow extraction, detonated like a nuke across the internet. Cole Industries stock didn't last a second after the market opened before trading was halted. Partners issued termination notices overnight, banks called in their loans, and suppliers showed up demanding payment. A business empire crumbled in the morning sun. I stayed in a guest room at the Moss estate, watching the news on my phone, feeling a profound sense of peace. Adrian's assistant knocked and entered, handing me a file. "Miss Chloe, this is the visitation log for Ethan Cole from the detention center. Mr. Moss thought you might want to see it." I opened the file. It was a record of his lawyer's visit. The lawyer told him the Cole family was finished, completely and utterly. Ethan had roared and cursed, blaming everything on me. He completely lost control, screaming that he would kill me, and was finally given a sedative by force. I closed the file, feeling no sense of triumph, only the weariness of closure. Just then my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered, and a venomous voice came through, my former mother-in-law. She'd somehow been released on bail. "Chloe, you little bitch. Are you happy now? You're proud of yourself for ruining our family, aren't you?" I said nothing, just listened quietly. "Let me tell you, don't celebrate too soon. You think you're safe hiding in the Moss estate? Your parents are still back in their small town, right? That road gets a lot of drunk truck drivers at night. What if one of them has brake failure? TSK. She used the most vicious words to paint a picture of my parents' bloody demise. How about it? Scared now? Go and drop the charges. Right now. Or you can get ready to collect your parents' bodies." I gripped the phone, a cold sweat breaking out on my back. This was their last, desperate move, and the one that hit my weakest point. Just as I was about to speak, Adrian, who was beside me, took my phone and put it on speaker. Then he used my phone to dial another number. When the call connected, he said only one thing: "Play the recording for him." The next second, every single one of my ex-mother-in-law's venomous, threatening words was played back through my phone's earpiece. On the other end of the line, she instantly went silent. Adrian spoke calmly into my phone. "Ma'am, I forgot to tell you. An hour before you called, my people had already submitted the full recording of what you just said to the police as new evidence of threat, intimidation, and obstruction of justice. Now you can wait to be arrested a second time." The courtroom was solemn. I sat at the plaintiff's table, flanked by the nation's top legal team, hired for me by Adrian. Across from me, Ethan wore a prison uniform. In just a few days, he looked as if all his vitality had been drained, gaunt and utterly devoid of his former arrogance. His mother had completely lost her mind after her second arrest, and was unfit to stand trial. I didn't look at him. My gaze was fixed on the judge. My lawyer was calmly and clearly stating my demands. My client, Chloe, formally files suit against Ethan Cole for kidnapping and attempted aggravated assault. The evidence is irrefutable, and we request that the court sentence him to the fullest extent of the law. Ethan's defense attorney stood up, attempting a final, desperate defense. Objection. My client acted irrationally while his father was critically ill, and he was under extreme emotional distress. His motive was to save his father, which is understandable. My lawyer cut him off. Understandable? Forgive me, but kidnapping a woman, taking her to a private operating room, tying her to a table, and preparing to perform a live bone marrow extraction without anesthesia, which part of that is understandable? The defense attorney's face turned red. The evidence was ironclad. Ethan completely broke down. He stopped trying to defend himself and just knelt on the floor, letting out a desperate, animalistic groan. The final verdict was no surprise. Ethan Cole was found guilty of kidnapping and attempted aggravated assault. The charges were combined and he was sentenced to 15 years in prison. All Cole family assets were frozen and put up for public auction. After all debts were cleared, the remaining $3.7 billion would be paid to me in damages. The moment the judge announced the sentence, I didn't smile. I just stood up and walked over to Ethan, who was now a boneless heap on the floor. I knelt down and said in a voice only we could hear, "Ethan, you always said my only value was to be your father's medicine. Now I've used everything your family had to buy my life back. From now on, we owe each other nothing. You can stay in this prison and properly atone for your sins." The trial of the Cole family was over, but Luna's drama was just beginning. She was even more foolish than I'd imagined. After the Coles went down, her first thought wasn't to distance herself, but to flee with the money she'd wheedled out of Ethan over the years, probably thinking it was enough to live lavishly for the rest of her life. Unfortunately for her, she was intercepted at the airport by police who were already waiting. The list of her crimes was longer than I'd thought: fraud, defamation, and conspiracy to commit kidnapping. It turned out Luna knew about the plan to take me to that private surgical room from the very beginning, and had even provided them with the contact for the illegal clinic. She naively thought that if I was dead or disabled, she could secure her position as Mrs. Cole forever. In court, she cried a river of tears, putting on her usual pitiful act. I didn't know anything. Ethan forced me. I just loved him so much. I believed everything he said. She tried to pin all the blame on Ethan, casting herself as an innocent girl blinded by love. Your Honor, I even wanted to donate my bone marrow for his father. I'm a good person, I really am, please believe me. Her performance was convincing, but the audience had changed. The media Adrian brought in weren't the hacks the Coles could buy off. They dug into Luna's past and uncovered a bombshell. She was Noli Drusalnir from a poor family, but a professional gold digger. This wasn't her first time. Before she met Ethan, she had used similar scripts of sacrificing for my father, and sacrificing for love to swindle money and sympathy from multiple wealthy men. One of them had even been tricked into bankruptcy and committed suicide. Case after case, the evidence was irrefutable. Her so-called kindness was nothing but carefully packaged, vicious self-interest. When this evidence was presented in court, Luna was dumbstruck. She stopped crying and just sat there in the defendant's box, her pretty face showing a blank, dazed expression for the first time. In the end, with multiple convictions, she was sentenced to 10 years in prison. This outcome was even more satisfying to me than Ethan's, because I knew that for someone like Luna, who lived on her beauty and the adoration of others, prison was the true hell. The media coverage was relentless. An Angel's Fall, unmasking the two faces of gold digger Luna, and from high society darling to prisoner. How many did she deceive? The articles included a photo of her in prison, wearing a drab uniform, her hair cut into a ragged bob. Without her exquisite makeup, her sallow skin and deep, dark circles were exposed. She had lost all her glamour, stripped of her beautiful facade, living a miserable existence in a place without sunlight. It was the starkest possible contrast to the most beautiful angel Ethan had cherished and the media had praised. I closed the news page. The $3.7 billion in compensation had already been deposited into my account. A string of cold numbers. I looked at it for a long time, then called Adrian's assistant. Help me set up a foundation. What should we name it? Let's call it Rebirth. I poured half of the compensation I received from the Cole family into this foundation. Then, anonymously, I made the first donation to the National Bone Marrow Registry to fund treatment for impoverished patients who truly needed transplants but couldn't afford them. After doing all this, the heaviest stone in my heart, a remnant of my past life, was finally lifted. Luna had used fake kindness to benefit herself, while I used the blood money from my enemy's downfall to do real good. Online, people compared the two stories. A false angel had fallen, while I, Chloe, the woman once reviled as a cold-blooded viper, had reshaped my own value amid public praise. A true beacon of light never needs to be defined by others. All the hatred had settled. My world was quieter than it had ever been. Adrian didn't have me stay in the guest room any longer. He moved me directly into the master bedroom. He brought in the world's best medical team to help me recover. The chronic pains from my past life, etched into my very soul, slowly began to heal under their meticulous care. After I recovered, I didn't choose a life of leisure. I want to work at Moss Corporation, I told Adrian. He was reviewing documents and looked up, not a trace of surprise in his now vibrant eyes. What position do you want? Your assistant. He smiled. My assistant isn't an easy job. I know. I met his gaze. But I have an advantage no one else has. My advantage was the business knowledge I had absorbed as Ethan's fiancé, combined with my precise predictions of business trends for the next few years. I joined Moss Corporation. At first, everyone thought I was just a pretty face who had parachuted in because I was Mrs. Moss. That was until I helped the company avoid a massive investment trap with a pinpoint analysis of an emerging industry, then turned around and acquired the most promising core technology team from that same project. After that, all the whispers of doubt vanished. I was no longer the hate-filled woman who needed his protection. I became his most capable partner, his most in sync comrade. We attended meetings together, analyzed projects together, and fought side by side at the negotiating table. A single look from him was enough for me to understand his intent. He always saw the core value in the proposals I put forward. That kind of synergy went beyond words. The contract marriage between us was, without us even noticing, torn to shreds. One late night, we had just wrapped up a cross-border acquisition. I was so tired I collapsed onto the sofa when we got home. But he poured me a glass of red wine. "Chloe," he said, sitting beside me, looking at me seriously. "Shouldn't we revise our agreement?" My heart skipped a beat. "How do you want to revise it?" He didn't answer. Instead, he took a velvet box from his pocket and opened it. Inside was a simple but dazzling diamond ring. "I want to get rid of the word agreement." His honesty caught me completely off guard. "I admit, at first, I approached you to get revenge on the Cole family. I faked my blindness and laid low for years, just waiting for a chance to deliver a fatal blow. Your appearance was an accident, but also the perfect opportunity. But later, everything changed." He took my hand and gently slid the ring onto my finger. It was a perfect fit. "I watched you standing before me, trying to hide your anxiety while flawlessly analyzing my medical condition. I watched you use the limited resources I gave you to pull off your first brilliant counterattack. I watched you at the gala, cornering Luna with just a few words. Chloe, I realized I was falling for you. Not because you were a weapon against the Coles, but because you were you. I even started to get jealous of that idiot Ethan, jealous that he ever had you. Before I kicked down that door to the operating room, I was terrified. I was afraid that if I was even a second too late, you would be truly hurt. In that moment, I understood that revenge on the Coles didn't matter anymore. All I wanted was for you to be safe. I love you, Chloe." He planned a grand proposal for me, but not for the whole world to see. He booked an entire observatory. That night, there were no guests, no media, just the two of us. Above us was the vast, starry sky, and below us, the glittering lights of the city. He got down on one knee and proposed to me for the second time. "Chloe, are you willing to entrust your real, bright future to me?" I looked at the starlight reflected in his eyes. All the pain and grievances from this life and the last vanished in that moment. I nodded forcefully. "I am." My life was completely severed from the past. I had broken out of my cocoon and was reborn. I had finally found my new beginning. 3 years later, under my and Adrian's joint leadership, Moss Corporation had become an industry giant spanning technology, finance, and biomedicine. I was no longer just Chloe. I was the co-CEO of Moss Corporation, the Ms. Moss respected and feared throughout the business world. One day, I was attending an international medical forum. During a break, my assistant handed me a tablet with a news story. The headline read, "Former Golden Boy shows good behavior in prison, may be eligible for reduced sentence." The subject of the article was Ethan Cole. The reporter mentioned his good behavior and active participation in labor reform, suggesting he had repented. The article included a recent photo. In it, he wore a blue and white striped prison uniform, his hair shaved short, revealing a pale scalp. He was so thin he was almost unrecognizable, with sunken cheeks and dark, hollow eyes. There was no trace of the dashing Cole family heir he once was. The reporter asked him what he regretted most. He looked at the camera, his eyes empty. His lips moved for a long time before he finally whispered, almost in a daze, repeating one name over and over. "Chloe. I'm so sorry, Chloe." His spirit had been completely shattered during the trial 3 years ago. All that was left was a shell of a man, tormented by eternal regret. The article briefly mentioned the fates of the other Coles. His father couldn't handle the shock of the scandal and died in his hospital bed shortly after it broke. His mother, convicted of making threats, spent 2 years in prison. When she got out, her mind was broken. Destitute and alone, she froze to death in a low-income housing unit one snowy winter night. Her body not discovered until days later. I calmly closed the news page, feeling not a single ripple in my heart. Their regret, their misery, what did it have to do with me? My new life had long since drawn a clear line from that rotten past. After the forum, I walked out of the conference center to find Adrian's car waiting. He opened the door for me and naturally took my briefcase. Tired? I'm okay. I leaned on his shoulder, breathing in his familiar, comforting scent. The car moved smoothly along the city's main artery. Outside the window were the glittering lights of the empire we had built, as brilliant as a galaxy. He took my hand, our fingers intertwining. What are you thinking about? I turned to look at his perfect profile. I'm thinking how lucky I am that I was reborn, that I ripped up that match report, and that I made that call to you. He didn't speak, just squeezed my hand tighter. The car pulled up to our villa on the hill, our home. He held me as we stood before the massive floor-to-ceiling windows, looking down at the city that had become even more prosperous because of us. I rested my cheek against his warm chest. This life, with him, with my career, with a brand new future, this was enough. As for those living in their own hell of regret, let them watch my new life from afar forever. Let's clear our minds and get ready for the next story. One day, my husband suddenly shook me awake. He told me our son had gotten into trouble and needed $80,000 for damages. I froze. What son? We didn't have a son. He said shamelessly, I didn't want you to go through the trouble of a second pregnancy, so I had my secretary have one for me. Even though you didn't give birth to him, he's still your son. I won't treat you unfairly in the future. I slapped him hard across the face. Wyatt, what the hell did you just say? He grabbed my wrist. Don't be crazy. Leo is my son and you're my wife. It's your damn duty to raise him. With that, he slammed the door and left, leaving me shaking. 20 years of marriage, and this is what I get, his casual, entitled betrayal. Later, I made him lose everything. Then he got on his knees and begged me to come back. The next day, I went straight to the police station and slapped our household registration book on the counter. I need you to look up the information on any children registered under Wyatt's name. The officer looked up at me. I'm sorry, ma'am, but for a non-immediate family member inquiry, we need the guardian's consent. I let out a bitter laugh. He didn't ask for my consent when he demanded money last night, did he? Officer, I'm Wyatt's legal wife. His child from an affair has gotten into trouble and needs money for damages. Don't I have a right to know the truth? The officers conferred for a moment before pulling up the records. I took the file, my fingers trembling slightly. It clearly showed Wyatt's name, another woman's name, and their son's birth certificate. My vision went black, and I nearly fainted. An officer steadied me, asking with concern, Ma'am, are you okay? I forced down my rage. Thank you. I want to report my husband for bigamy. Also, I need to file to freeze our joint assets. The officer nodded. Ma'am, please calm down. Even with this report, you still have a responsibility to cooperate with the investigation into this case involving Leo. Also, do you have any proof of Wyatt's bigamy? I was stunned. Isn't this illegitimate child proof enough? The officer shook his head. No. You need to provide evidence that they lived together as husband and wife, like a marriage certificate, a joint lease, or testimony from neighbors. I walked out in a daze. A second later, my phone rang. Wyatt's voice was like a death knell. Where's the money? Give it to me now. 80,000. Don't make me say it again. I want to see her. Who? He asked, confused. That bitch. If you want the money, bring her to the Starbucks by the entrance. I want to see for myself just how shameless a homewrecker can be. Megan, I'm warning you, don't push my buttons. I hung up and let out a long, shaky breath. Just hearing his voice made me want to grab a knife. I looked down at my phone's lock screen, at the smiling face of my daughter. Mia has always been so considerate it hurts. She never asks for extra allowance and wears her school uniform until it's faded, refusing to get a new one. It turns out every penny my daughter and I saved was being used by that bastard to support his other family. I turned and stormed into a jewelry store in the mall, taking out all the emergency savings I had. Please wrap up these gold bracelets for me, thank you. Holding the heavy bracelets gave me a small sense of security. What kind of life had I been living all these years? Pinching pennies just so that Animal could have his fun on the side? When I arrived at the designated Starbucks, I pushed open the glass door and immediately saw Wyatt next to a woman I assumed was Crystal. She was young and beautiful, with flawless skin. In the reflection, my own weary face stood in stark contrast. When Wyatt saw me, he dropped her hand like it was electric. Megan, you're here. I sat down and looked the woman straight in the eye. So, what kind of trouble did your little bastard get into? The woman's pupils shrank, the smile on her face vanishing. Wyatt cleared his throat nervously. Megan, can you keep your voice down? This isn't a good look. His childish reaction told me they probably hadn't done a paternity test yet. He took a deep breath, his voice barely a whisper. Megan, I know you're just saying things out of anger, but Leo's situation can't wait. The other party said if we don't pay in the next 2 days, they're taking legal action. I stirred my coffee slowly. Since you're so sure he's your son, why don't we get a paternity test first? I happen to know the head of forensics at a top-tier hospital. If we rush it, we can get the results by tomorrow. No. Crystal blurted out, knocking over her coffee. Wyatt, we can't use a hospital she knows. What if she tampers with the report? Let's go to a certified forensics lab ourselves. A proper institution is more reliable. Wyatt stared at Crystal for a few seconds, then slowly pulled his arm away. Megan's right. We should get a test. Wyatt, will never raise another man's child. I elegantly picked up my bag. Then I'll wait for your good news. I'll spend the next couple of days liquidating my investments anyway. 80,000 is no small sum, I need to be sure. As I turned to leave, I heard Crystal's tearful voice behind me. Wyatt, you don't suspect me, do you? I've been with you for so many years. The moment the glass door closed, Wyatt's call came through. Megan, I won't be coming home for a few days. Crystal is a little unstable right now. Can you pack a few changes of clothes for me? I'll come by to pick them up later. I gripped my phone, said nothing, and calmly hung up. When I got home, I went straight to the closet, stuffed all his pilled old t-shirts, faded underwear, and worn-out socks into a travel bag, and left it at the front desk of our building. Then I sent him a text. Your bag is at the front desk. Our daughter is coming home tomorrow. Don't show your face around here. My phone immediately buzzed. Okay, after this is all over, we'll have a good talk. I miss our daughter too. I stared at the screen and sneered. You miss her? You don't deserve to. I immediately started taking pictures of all of Wyatt's prized possessions he'd collected over the years, limited edition stamps, watches, gold bars, sneakers, and expensive liquor, and listed them on eBay and Facebook Marketplace. Oh, and his computer and DSLR camera, both at half price. Within half an hour, buyers were flocking. After the valuable items were gone, I started selling off his leather jackets, trench coats, and belts. Even his down jackets, thermal underwear, tank tops, and boxers were all photographed and listed. At this point, I can basically accept his responsibility for the illegitimate child, but it will have to be paid for with your personal property. After 3 days of selling off most of his personal belongings, I finally had enough money, with some to spare. Through the boy's birth certificate, I also found out the reason for the compensation. The 6-year-old was setting off firecrackers in the neighborhood and blew up a neighbor's Mercedes. Luckily, no one was hurt, but the damages really did come to $80,000. 6 years old? The number made me see black. That means Wyatt's affair had been going on for a full 7 years, starting right when our daughter began middle school. If this kid keeps causing trouble, will I still be responsible? I was now sitting in my friend's law office. My friend pushed up her glasses. During a marriage, a spouse's debts are considered joint responsibility, so you can't avoid it. Then if something happens to my daughter, will that other woman be held responsible? Unfortunately, no. She's not bound by marriage law. In fact, legally, the affair gives her more freedom. How ironic. The loyal person is bound by responsibility, while the perpetrator gets off scot-free. This marriage has given me nothing but scars and a piece of paper that could saddle me with huge debts at any moment. How am I supposed to protect my daughter's future? 3 days later, my phone rang before dawn. Wyatt's voice was filled with unconcealed excitement. Megan, the test results are in. Leo is my son. Our family has an heir. You don't have to worry anymore. I bit my lip so hard I tasted blood. Is that so? Then let's meet and talk. You have the money ready, right? He asked tentatively. Don't worry, it's ready. I hung up, my heart a mix of emotions. In 20 years of marriage, every penny in our account was saved through my careful budgeting. Ever since Wyatt started his own business a few years ago, the money he brought home had dwindled to almost nothing. When our daughter was in high school, she took the bus to save on transportation costs. And now, this scumbag was shamelessly demanding the savings my daughter and I had scraped together to bail out another woman's child. How could someone so shameless exist? We met at Starbucks again. The first thing Wyatt did was demand I transfer the money to his account. I stirred my coffee, looking calmly at the two of them. The money isn't an issue, but we need to be clear about this child's custody. What custody issue? Wyatt frowned. Crystal instantly tensed up. Leo is only 6 and he's already caused this much trouble. Clearly, my dear Crystal here is struggling with parenting. As the legal wife, I'm willing to adopt the child and raise him for you. Crystal screamed. What? Are you out of your mind? Adopt him? Who the hell do you think you are? I ignored her outburst and looked at Wyatt. You only think of me when your illegitimate son gets in trouble. You need to show some sincerity here. Crystal panicked, grabbing Wyatt's sleeve. Honey, Leo is my life. You promised you'd always protect us. I swear I'll be a better mother to him. Wyatt wrung his hands. Megan, can we talk about this after the kid is out of? No, I cut him off sharply. If you insist on maintaining 2 families, that's bigamy. For our daughter's sake, I can let the past go, but Leo's upbringing is critical. What if next time he blows up a gas station instead of a car? I smiled slightly. Wyatt, you're 48. If that happens, how will you pay? With your life. Crystal's face went white. No, there won't be a next time. I'll watch him closely. This time I was just careless. You were careless because you had a mahjong game scheduled with your friends, right? Crystal looked at me in horror. You've been following me? I waved my hand dismissively. This trash wasn't worth a second of my time. The police told me. It's clear you're incapable of raising a child and can't support yourself. Your education and life experience are miles behind mine. I then looked lovingly at Wyatt. Honey, thank you for being so considerate of my age and not wanting me to have a second child. So you found this simple-minded bimbo to carry on the family line. I'll forget what happened. You can choose. Jail time or I adopt the kid. Bang! Crystal kicked back her chair and shot to her feet screaming, Wyatt, are you fucking mute? Where's the money? You two were supposed to get a divorce. Get it over with. I raised my eyebrows in mock surprise. A divorce? Why would we get a divorce? Is my 6-figure salary not enough to support the family? Or have I not been indulgent enough with you? The entire coffee shop fell silent. Even the espresso machine stopped humming. All eyes were on our little drama. Wyatt frowned, his voice low. Megan, are you serious? I swirled my coffee, a smile playing on my lips. Of course. So, am I fit to be your son's mother? My salary wasn't nearly that high, but I knew Wyatt too well. On the scales of money versus love, he would always choose money. Sure enough, I saw his eyes start to waver. Crystal was young and beautiful, but her extravagant spending over the past 7 years, plus her son being a bottomless pit, had already worn him down. The 7-year itch was the easiest time to sway him. Smack. Wyatt suddenly slammed his hand on the table. If you're so rich, then 80,000 should be pocket change for you. I'm asking you one last time, are you giving me the money or not? Of course. I smiled and opened my banking app. As soon as you sign the adoption papers, the 80,000 will be transferred. Before Crystal could explode, I delivered the final blow. If the child is with me, he can be registered at our address in the top school district. I'll send him to the best international school. When he comes of age, I'll even transfer our 3-bedroom condo to his name. I looked at Crystal. And you, not only do you get to shed the stigma of being a mistress, but your son gets to be the official heir. After all, you wouldn't want his security clearance to be denied someday because his birth mother was a homewrecker, would you? Crystal's face went pale, her lower lip trembling. How interesting. It turns out that when things get ugly, the person who was betrayed is never the one who panics the most. No wonder my lawyer friend said that the more you want a divorce, the calmer you have to act, or you'll be taken advantage of. Seeing the situation was under control, I took a business card out of my bag and handed it to Wyatt. This is one of my clients who specializes in loans. If you need money, you can ask him. Not only can he get you the lowest interest rate, but I can also find you a guarantor. With that, I picked up my bag and strode out. I knew that with Wyatt's cautious nature, he would never use someone I recommended. But I had already laid a trap, feeding his contact information to various loan companies through different channels. Soon, my inside source contacted me. Ms. Lee, the situation doesn't look good. Mr. Wyatt has already mortgaged all his available assets. Getting a $3 million loan might be difficult. $3 million? The number made my pupils shrink. But then I realized he wouldn't be taking such a huge risk in revealing his secret son if he weren't completely desperate. I laid out the next part of my plan. Try to convince him to transfer our joint properties into our daughter's name. That way, as her guardian, he'll have the right to mortgage her property. Tell him the largest house can be mortgaged for $5 million, and try to quote high on the others too. My friend paused for a moment. Okay, I understand. For the past few years, Wyatt had been trying to mortgage the 3 properties we owned, but unfortunately for him, my name was on all the deeds. Without my signature, he couldn't get a loan. Now I was giving him a chance to use our daughter as a pawn. The loan trap was set. Let's see if he'd risk it all for a big payoff. Around 10 p.m., a message from Wyatt popped up. Honey, I'll be home later to discuss the adoption. I have to put on a show during the day, or she'll make a scene. I replied emotionlessly, okay, I'll wait for you, and turned on the home security cameras. Less than half an hour later, he rushed in and hugged me tightly. Honey, I'm so sorry for what you've been through these past few days. If it weren't for Leo's trouble, I wouldn't be spending any time with her. It was just a moment of weakness. You and our daughter are the only ones in my heart. You have to believe me. I watched his performance silently, feeling his slightly ragged breath. After a moment he continued, I've thought it over. Leo's problems shouldn't affect you. Crystal and I will figure out the $80,000 ourselves. But Mia is my daughter too, and I want to transfer the houses to her name as compensation. What do you think? I suppressed my excitement and feigned being moved. As long as you still care about this family, our daughter and I will always be here waiting for you. Wyatt, relieved, was about to open the closet when his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and quickly grabbed his jacket. Something urgent came up at the office. Remember to pick up our daughter tomorrow. I'll see you at the property registration office. I smiled as I watched him leave. It seemed he couldn't wait another minute. Funny, neither could I. The next day, we were at the property office on time. I had gotten the earliest appointment, and all the transfers would be done in half an hour. The second the paperwork for the 3rd house was complete, his phone rang. He glanced at it, then grabbed the 3 new deeds. There's a situation at the office. I have to go handle it. Thanks for your help. Before he finished speaking, he was out the door. I watched his hurried retreat with a cold smile. The climax of this play was finally here. I had edited a video of his heartfelt confession from last night, along with photos from the property transfer, and sent it all to Crystal. I was sure no mistress could tolerate the man she'd spent 7 years with swearing he never loved her in front of his wife. Wyatt might have thought it was just an act, a means to an end, but in Crystal's eyes, it was a blatant betrayal. She thought she was free from the constraints of marriage, free to do as she pleased. But she didn't realize that because of that very marriage certificate, every penny she had spent over the years was considered joint marital property. I could, at any time, use the law to reclaim the wealth that rightfully belonged to me and my daughter. That was the unbridgeable gap between a wife and a mistress. Afterward, I took my daughter's hand and filed a lost property report at the county recorder's office. The original deeds in Wyatt's possession were now void. After safely dropping my daughter off at school, I went to a real estate agent downstairs and started the process of selling the houses. That's right. Wyatt wanted to mortgage our daughter's properties, but I was going to sell them for her. As expected, Wyatt called me that night, his voice a roar. Megan, what's the meaning of those photos you sent Crystal? Are you trying to push me to the brink? Photos. I feigned confusion. I was just sharing some warm family moments. Is she being a little too sensitive? Megan, just give me a little more time, I promise. I calmly cut off his empty promise. Wyatt, haven't you gotten tired of acting all these years? There was a stunned silence on the other end. What? What do you mean by that? I mean it's time for you to act like a man and take responsibility. Give Crystal the legitimate status she deserves. Don't let your child live in the shadows forever. You want a divorce? His voice shot up, filled with disbelief. After all, I had been so calm and forgiving lately. He must have thought I'd forever be his doormat. He had no idea my patience was solely for the sake of those 3 houses. Tomorrow you'll receive a special gift. With those final words, I hung up. This carefully planned hunt was finally coming to a close. But I never expected that Crystal would beat me to the punch and sue me first. As Leo's guardian, she filed a lawsuit accusing me of maliciously misappropriating marital assets and preventing Wyatt from fulfilling his child support obligations. When I received the summons, I had to laugh. A homewrecker was now standing on the moral high ground, using the law against the legal wife. My hand holding the papers trembled, not from fear, but from the sheer audacity. In this game, I had underestimated my opponent's depravity. In court, Crystal cried her eyes out. Your Honor, my son is only 6 years old, and he can't even get basic child support. The defendant, as Wyatt's legal wife, has been controlling the family's finances and has even forced my son to drop out of school. She presented a stack of transfer records, claiming the money Wyatt had given her over the years was pitifully small. I looked coldly at Wyatt. From the witness stand, he didn't hesitate to stab me in the back. My wife has always hated this child. The money I've given them over the years, I had to save from my own lunch money. The next moment, the courtroom doors opened, and their son Leo was let in. He was wearing an ill-fitting old school uniform and stood timidly beside the plaintiff's table. Crystal suddenly dropped to her knees, hugging the child and sobbing. It's all my fault, all of it. But the child is innocent. Your Honor, please give him a chance to live. A murmur went through the courtroom. The elderly judge pushed up his glasses, his gaze now turning skeptical towards me. Just as the situation was about to spiral out of control, my lawyer, a sharp woman, rose to her feet. Her voice was calm and powerful. Your Honor, not every woman who gives birth deserves the sacred title of mother. The plaintiff, as the destroyer of a marriage, is the root cause of all the suffering her son has endured through her own immoral actions. In response to the plaintiff's false accusations, we need to clarify 2 facts. First, upon learning that her son caused an accident requiring $80,000 in damages, my client immediately liquidated all her available assets to raise the funds. Second, the reason for the delayed payment is the discovery of the plaintiff's severe negligence as a guardian. That a 6-year-old child could cause such significant damage is deeply concerning regarding his upbringing. Your Honor, true motherly love should build a moral fortress for a child, not push them into an abyss of indecency. Therefore, we formally request that the court initiate a custody evaluation and grant custody of Leo to a more suitable guardian. Bullshit. Crystal screamed. Who the hell do you think you are? You're about to get divorced. Why should you get custody? The plaintiff will maintain order in the court. The judge snapped, banging his gavel. Counsel for the defense, please continue. My lawyer calmly arranged her files. Your Honor, it's clear that disputes in a marriage are inevitable, especially when one discovers a 7-year affair and is suddenly faced with a massive debt. My client has shown incredible restraint. In fact, not only are we not suing the plaintiff for destroying a marriage, but we are grateful for her care of Mr. Wyatt these past 7 years. As for the $80,000 in damages, we have a check ready to be paid directly to the owner of the damaged vehicle, with one condition: that the plaintiff signs over her guardianship rights. She then presented a document to the court. These are certificates showing my client's daughter, Mia, has been an honor roll student for 12 consecutive years. Compared to the plaintiff's son's record of vandalism, it's clear who is the better parent. The judge took off his reading glasses and tapped his knuckles on the bench. In the end, we won. A Child Protective Services team was quickly formed to evaluate custody. The child was temporarily placed with Wyatt's mother, and the plaintiff was required to attend weekly parenting classes. The moment the gavel fell, Crystal slumped in her seat, and Wyatt's face was ashen. I knew they wanted my money, but I was different. I wanted their lives. Soon Leo was sent to live with Wyatt's mother. The old-fashioned woman's parenting style was completely out of step with modern methods. She refused to turn on the air conditioning on a 100-degree day, causing Leo to collapse from heatstroke due to severe dehydration. On the way to the hospital, she also fainted from exhaustion at the emergency room entrance. Wyatt was then forced to shuttle between two patients. Surprisingly, just 3 days later, he brought the still recovering Leo to my doorstep. When I opened the door, Wyatt's face was openly defiant. You wanted a son, didn't you? Now you have one. I hope you'll treat Leo with the same care you gave Mia. The moment Leo stepped inside, he started knocking over everything in the living room, spitting on the hardwood floors, stomping on the sofa with his outside shoes, and even grabbing an object to scratch the walls. Wyatt leaned against the doorframe, giving me a smug thumbs up. Boys should be wild. That's a true heir to our family. As my wife, you have to learn to tolerate my child. I nodded slightly, my voice calm. Don't worry, I'll teach him well. As he swaggered away, I quietly locked the door, turned around, and spread out the few remaining boxes of Wyatt's personal belongings on the floor. I said gently to the little boy, "These are all your daddy's treasures. You can play with them however you want." That night, I sent photos of Leo's masterpieces to Wyatt. He went insane. His custom-tailored suits were in shreds, his dress shirts were soaking in a bucket of acrylic paint, his prized Gundam models were dismantled, and a set of expensive, unsold teapots was at the bottom of the fish tank, sharing the water with the tropical fish. As expected, 3 seconds later, my screen started flashing wildly. I calmly switched my phone to silent. When the smart lock opened, Wyatt froze in the doorway, his eyes wide with disbelief at the wreckage. His hand trembled as he pointed. You can't even control a child? What's the point of you being alive? Without another word, he grabbed Leo and slapped him several times. I quickly stepped between them and handed him a brochure. Hey, don't take it out on the kid. Why don't we send him to a behavioral boot camp? This place specializes in troubled kids. No child is a lost cause once they get there. That night, Wyatt drove Leo to the camp. The next morning, Leo woke up in a strange place and immediately used his watch phone to call Crystal, crying for help. When she heard, Crystal gathered her friends and family and started screaming insults outside my apartment building. Meanwhile, Wyatt, the mastermind behind it all, hid at home, too afraid to show his face. The time was right. It was my turn to act. I immediately reported the disturbance to the police and formally filed a lawsuit against Crystal, demanding she return every cent Wyatt had spent on her. I had held back before because I knew she would use the child as a shield to gain public sympathy. But this time, I was going for the jugular, leaving her no room to recover. When Wyatt showed up again, he was greeted by a password-incorrect message on the door. He frantically called my phone, his voice hysterical. "Megan, why are strangers living in our house?" I sighed wearily. "It's our daughter's house. She's an adult now. She has the right to do what she wants with her property." There was a long pause on the other end. This father, who had missed his own daughter's coming-of-age ceremony, was only now realizing he had walked right into my trap. "Megan, let's talk this over." His voice suddenly softened. "Just drop the lawsuit against Crystal, she can't." Too late. I cut him off and sent him photos of our daughter's early admission letter to a top university, her international academic summer camp certificate, her trust fund agreement, and her civil service exam preparation plan. This is the kind of life a responsible parent plans for their child. And you? What have you given her all these years besides betrayal and lies? When I managed to get all this carefully compiled information into Crystal's hands, The woman finally snapped. She handed over all her evidence and sued Wyatt for bigamy and embezzlement, aiming to destroy my daughter's future and end her path to a government career. And at that moment, I let out the smile I had been suppressing for so long. Yes, this was the checkmate I had been waiting for. I wasn't holding on to any lingering feelings for Wyatt, nor was I unable to prove his bigamy. It's just that I had a daughter, and I needed someone else to take the fall for me. As Wyatt was being led away, he looked back at me, his eyes filled with disbelief. In court, I pulled out the divorce papers I had prepared long ago. Wyatt cried and begged me. We were married for so long. Can't you show some mercy? I smirked and pushed the agreement in front of him. Sign it. Behave yourself in prison, and when you get out, you can give Crystal the status she deserves. Don't you fucking mention her name to me. She's a bitch. Megan, I swear I never loved her. I looked at him calmly and placed the pen on the papers. Wyatt, our 20 years of marriage ended the moment you betrayed me. Seeing my mind was made up, Wyatt dropped the act. My assets are gone and I'm drowning in debt. But your 6-figure salary by law, you have to give me half. I unhurriedly pushed the trust fund documents across the table. Unfortunately, all my assets have been transferred into our daughter's trust, and they are not subject to division. Her life is already set, so why would she need a government job? Besides, she's 18 now and no longer needs a guardian. As for you, you spent all these years focused on your secret family, and now you want to split the assets my daughter and I worked so hard for? Where do you get the nerve? Finally, under Wyatt's stunned gaze, I got my justice. Crystal, consumed by jealousy, had lost her mind and lost the game completely. And Wyatt's debts, which were not incurred for our family, were of course no longer my problem. Although the road to recovering the assets was long, justice was served. After a court-ordered enforcement, Crystal was forced to return everything that had never belonged to her. When the moving truck unloaded a mountain of luxury goods, I couldn't help but cry. In 20 years of marriage, I had owned less than 1/10 of what was in front of me. I efficiently photographed everything and listed it on second-hand platforms. The gold jewelry was melted down to become part of my daughter's future. The property registered under Crystal's name was also heading to a judicial auction. With the divorce finalized, Leo's custody legally reverted to his birth mother. As the notary delivered the final property division certificate, I let out a soft sigh. The battle was finally over. But the peace only lasted for 2 years. One morning, a police officer and an 8-year-old boy knocked on my door. I opened the door and froze. The officer confirmed my identity. Hello, Ms. Lee. This child's mother has gone missing. I looked down at Leo, standing next to the officer, unsure how to react. So why did you bring him to my house? The officer sighed. This is the 6th time in 2 years she's abandoned him in a public place. This time it was at the train station. Under child protection laws, he has to be temporarily cared for by his next of kin. Next of kin? I sneered. Sorry, his next of kin is in prison. But the officer hesitated. Wyatt is his biological father, and your daughter, as his half-sister, has a legal obligation to help. What? My daughter and I exclaimed at the same time. This was absurd. I looked down at the 8-year-old boy. The arrogance was gone from his eyes, replaced by a timid fear. It seemed he had been through a lot in the past 2 years. Finally, I sighed and stepped aside. Since my daughter was home from college, I decided to take both kids to see their father. Through the glass, Wyatt's eyes widened when he saw the 3 of us. How could you? I rubbed my temples wearily. Your precious Crystal has disappeared, and now the responsibility of raising Leo has fallen on our daughter. As his half-sister, she has to take care of him. But she's only 20 years old. Haha. Payback. This is payback. Wyatt suddenly interrupted me, his face contorting as he banged on the glass. Megan, you vicious woman. After what you did to me and Crystal, it's finally your turn. Leo, don't be afraid. Let her throw whatever fit she wants. Daddy's got your back. I watched his hysterical display and shook my head. 2 years in prison hadn't taught him a thing. I gestured for my daughter to take Leo outside, then sat back down, a knowing smile on my lips. Wyatt, you've misunderstood. I came today to tell you some good news. I'm getting married." With that, I elegantly pulled a gold-embossed invitation from my bag. My fiancé is a director at a major corporation. Unfortunately, he can't have children, so it's a good thing I have a ready-made son to help me marry into a wealthy family. I was originally going to tell you that I'm changing Leo's last name, but on second thought, I don't think I need your permission. I stood up and smoothed my dress. After all, I have custody. A torrent of curses and furious banging came from behind the glass. I walked out without looking back. Soon after, the prison called. Wyatt had submitted a request for a reduced sentence on the grounds that he needed to fulfill his parental duties. I scoffed and hung up. Sure enough, when he learned I was starting the process of changing Leo's last name, the selfish man finally panicked. He was granted early parole. After his release, Wyatt searched for us like a headless chicken. When he couldn't find us, he went to the police station to report me for illegally taking a minor. In the mediation room, the officer pushed Leo's custody papers in front of me. "Ms. Lee, according to legal procedure, you need to complete the custody transfer." I promptly signed the papers and walked out of the station without a second glance. What he had fought so hard to get, I genuinely didn't want. A year later, I happened to hear about Wyatt from an old friend. After a great deal of effort, he had found Crystal, only to discover she was holding another baby. It turned out she had gone back to her old ways, destroying another family. But this time, she'd picked the wrong guy. The man disappeared after she gave birth to a daughter. With nowhere else to go, Crystal went back to Wyatt. Perhaps afraid of repeating the past, the two of them rushed to City Hall to get married. But married life was far from the paradise she had imagined. Wyatt despised the child who had no blood relation to him. The man who once doted on Crystal now constantly berated her and her daughter. Neighbors said they often heard a baby crying and a woman sobbing late at night. One rainy night, I ran into Crystal buying instant noodles at a pharmacy. She was holding a feverish baby girl, her clothes a far cry from their former glamour. When she saw me, she instinctively turned away and ran out into the rain with the child. Watching her pathetic figure disappear, I suddenly remembered the arrogant young woman in Starbucks all those years ago. Fate sometimes is the best storyteller.